Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Lives of the Sahaba, Volume 1. Foreword by Hazrat Maulana Sayyid Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi Rahimullah Ta'ala. All praises belong to Allah Tabarakallah Ta'ala, the Rabb of the universe. May the special mercies of Allah and peace be on our Master Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who is the seal of all Anbiya. May Allah Ta'ala's mercy and peace be on his family, all his companions, and all those coming unto the day of Qiyamah who follow him dutifully. Without a doubt, the lifestyle and history of Rasulullah ﷺ and his companions radiallahu ta'ala anhu are among the most powerful sources providing strength of Iman and love for the Deen. The Ummah and the call towards Deen has always been drawing sparks of Iman from these sources, and it is by this that the embers of their hearts have been kept burning. However, these embers are being quickly extinguished in the gale-force winds of worldly love. Once they are extinguished, this Ummah will lose its might, its identity, and its influence over others. It will then become a mere corpse which life will carry along on its shoulders. The biographies of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum contain the history of men who accepted the invitation of Islam when it was presented to them. Their hearts testified to its truth, and all they said when they were called towards Allah and His Rasul ﷺ was, "Our Rabb, we have certainly heard the caller calling to Iman, saying, 'Believe in your Rabb.' So we believed." They placed their hands in the hands of Rasulullah ﷺ, and it became easy for them to sacrifice their lives, their wealth, and their families. They then began to find pleasure in the difficulties and hardships that afflicted them in the course of calling others towards Allah. In this manner, conviction permeated their hearts and gained mastery over their bodies and their minds. They displayed the wonderful belief in the unseen, undying love for Allah and Rasulullah ﷺ, compassion for the mu'mineen, and sternness towards the kuffar. They preferred the akhirah to this world, credit the rewards of the akhirah to cash, the unseen to the seen, and guidance to ignorance. They were eager to invite people towards Islam, thus removing the creation from their slavery to the creation and taking them towards the servitude of Allah Ta'ala alone. They removed people from the injustice of other religions, transporting them to the justice of Islam. They displayed no concern for the attractions, vanities of this world, and aspired to meet Allah Ta'ala and enter Jannah. They also exhibited outstanding courage and far-sightedness in spreading the gift of Islam and delivering it to the world without any cost. For this purpose, they spread themselves throughout the far corners of the world, sparing no efforts to reach as far as they could. In doing this, they forgot their personal pleasures, forsook their luxuries, left their homes, and selflessly spent their lives and wealth. They continued in this manner until the foundations of Deen were established, hearts turned to Allah Ta'ala, and the blessed and pleasant winds of Iman blew strongly. An empire of Tawheed, Iman, Ibadah, and Taqwa was established. Jannah found a ready attraction in people, guidance spread throughout the world, and people entered the fold of Islam in droves. The books of history are full of their stories, and the chronicles of Islam record their accounts. This has always remained a source of revival and rejuvenation in the lives of Muslims. It is because of these accounts that the concern of callers to Islam and reformers have intensified. These narratives have always assisted in reviving the courage of Muslims and in rekindling the embers of Iman in their hearts and their allegiance to the Deen. However, there came a time when the Muslims grew unmindful of this history and forgot all about it. Muslim writers, lecturers, and preachers then turned to narratives depicting latter-day ascetics and saints. Books and compendiums overflowed with stories about them and their miracles. People became obsessed with these narratives, and they occupied pride of place in lectures, academic lessons, and books. As far as we know, the first person in our times who grew conscious of the status of the narratives and lives of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum in the fields of dawah and reforming the religious consciousness of people was the famous preacher and great reformer Hazrat Sheikh Muhammad Ilyas Khan Delvi Rahimullah Ta'ala. He recognized the value of this treasure of reformation that lay buried between the pages of books and realized the value of its effect on the hearts of people. He busily engaged himself in studying these accounts, teaching them, narrating them, and discussing them. I have personally seen him display a tremendous interest in the biographies of Rasulullah ﷺ and the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum by discussing them with his students and friends. These used to be recited to him every night, and he would listen to them with great attention and insatiability. He desired that they be relived, circulated, and discussed. His nephew, the great Muhaddith Hazrat Sheikh Muhammad Zakaria Khan Delvi Rahimullah Ta'ala, has written a book in Urdu about the stories of the Sahaba titled Hayatus-sahabah Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum. Hazrat Sheikh Muhammad Ilyas Rahimullah Ta'ala was overjoyed with this book and instructed those engaged in dawah and traveling the path of Allah Ta'ala to study and teach this book. Consequently, this book became one of the most important prescribed books for preachers and others and enjoyed wide acceptance. Hazrat Sheikh Muhammad Yusuf Rahimullah Ta'ala succeeded his esteemed father in assuming leadership of those engaged in the effort of dawah. He also followed his father's footsteps in his deep interest in the biographies of Rasulullah ﷺ and the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum. It was he who used to read these narratives to his father. Even after his father passed away, he continued studying biographies of Rasulullah ﷺ, books of Islamic history, and the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum despite his demanding commitments to the effort of dawah. I do not know of anyone with a wider scope of knowledge about the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum and the finer details of their lives. I do not know of anyone who could quote so many of their narratives, could cite them more eloquently and string them together as beautifully as pearls of a necklace. These reports and stories inspired his discourses and caused magical effects on the hearts of large groups of people who then found it easy to give great sacrifices in Allah's path. They were thus motivated to persevere the greatest of hardships and difficulties in Allah's path. During the period of his leadership, the effort of dawah spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula and even to places such as America, Europe, Japan, and the islands of the Indian Ocean. The necessity was then felt to produce a book for those taking up the effort of dawah and traveling to foreign countries could study and read to each other. This was needed to provide nourishment for their hearts and minds to motivate their spirituality and to encourage them to emulate Rasulullah ﷺ and the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum in spending their lives and wealth for the sake of Islam. It was needed to encourage them to travel and migrate for deen, to assist others doing the same, and to teach them the virtues of good deeds and noble character. A book was needed of such reports which when read would cause the reader to fade into the background, just as rivers lose themselves in the ocean, just as even a tall man would seem tiny in front of a towering mountain. In this way, they would begin to doubt the status of their conviction. They would regard their religious efforts to be inadequate when compared to the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhu, and then would give no importance to their lives in this world. The result would be that they would develop the courage to make greater efforts and resolutions. Allah Ta'ala had willed that the credit of writing such a valuable book should go to Hazrat Sheikh Muhammad Yusuf Rahimullah Ta'ala. In addition to the credit he received for his tremendous contribution to the effort of dawah. Therefore, despite his exhaustive commitments and a schedule filled with travels, lectures, and meetings with delegations and guests, the furthest one could get from the life of a writer, he drew great courage and resolved to involve himself in writing with the guidance and help of Allah Ta'ala. As difficult as it were to combine the life of a writer with that of a preacher, he succeeded in completing commentary of the famous book Hayatus Sahabah in 3 large volumes, collecting in it many reports that were scattered in the various books of biography and history. The distinguished author has commenced every section with reports on the life of Rasulullah ﷺ and then added accounts on the lives of the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum, devoting special attention to dawah and spiritual reformation for the benefit of those involved in these fields. Therefore, this book offers advice to preachers, is a great provision for those engaged in the effort of dawah, and a valuable teacher of Iman and conviction to the Muslim public. He has collected in these volumes such reports that cannot be found in any other book because they all have their sources in a myriad of historical and biographical books. He has prepared an encyclopedia that depicts the lives, behavior, and attributes of those living during the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. The painstaking details mentioned in this book gives it an inspirational effect, not felt in books that suffice with brief accounts. As a result, the reader is always basking in an environment of Iman, dawah, courage, virtue, sincerity, and asceticism. It is generally believed that a book is a reflection of the author, that it represents the love of his life, and that it will express the fervor and spirit with which it is written. If this be true, I can vouch that this book is truly inspiring, powerful, and a success because the author wrote it with great passion and love for the Sahaba Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhum. Love for the Sahaba had truly penetrated his very flesh and blood to the extent that it had dominated personality and psychology. He has lived in the mold of their lives for a long period of time and continues to do so, always drinking from the refreshing fountains of these reports. This book does not require a foreword from someone like myself because the author is an extremely eminent and sincere personality. I am convinced that he is nothing short of a divine gift and a gem from the gems of time with regard to the strength of his iman, the power of his dawah, his devotion to dawah, and his self-sacrificial behavior in the path of Allah Ta'ala. The likes of him are not found in the annals of history except after long periods of time. He leads an Islamic movement that is one of the most powerful, most judicious, and most inspiring. However, he wanted to honor me with writing this foreword, and I have every intention to be a part of this marvelous work. I have therefore written these few words hoping to achieve proximity to Allah Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala accept this book and make it a means of benefit to mankind. Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi, 12 January 1959.